From the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha. Consider This, a program of issues and information behind today's news.
I rise today to thank the people of my great state of Nebraska. It's been a tremendous honor to have had the opportunity to serve the state for 20 years, 8 as governor and 12 as United States Senator. The people of Nebraska are generous and hardworking, and it truly has been a privilege to have served them and represented them.
So what has Senator Ben Nelson been doing since then? Hi everyone, I'm Kathy Wyatt. Welcome to the 25th season and this week's edition of Consider This. Our topic, Death of the Senate. The title of his new book, Senator Nelson joins us now to talk about it and reflect on his years of public service. Thank you so much for being here and welcome.
Well, thank you, Kathy. I appreciate this opportunity to reconnect with the people of Nebraska this way, and it's a real pleasure to be here with you.
Wonderful. I want to start with that opening clip. What were you thinking as you watched it?
Well, you know, it was the end of an era, for sure, in closing out my Senate term. And, you know, it's sort of a mixed feelings about it. I knew it was coming to an end, and you're always sad when good things come to an end, and it had been a good experience, all 12 years in the Senate. And but I knew I wasn't going to be there. It was going to be different. Yes, all my colleagues, I'm still in touch with many of them, but it's a bit different if they're still in the Senate. Those of us who are expats, who are out, you know, we talk about the good old days, and we talk to the current senators about how good those days were, and really how good they can be again if they start following the rules as we see them.
Yeah, and before we talk about your book, I want to talk about the incredible journey that has gotten you this far. McCook, Nebraska, what significance does that have to you?
Well, you know, the interesting thing is McCook has had 3 governors and 2 United States senators, and I've been one of each of them. But it's expected of you out there to engage in public service. We've had a Speaker of the Nebraska Legislature, Senator Don Thompson, and we've had others who, the Mayor of Lincoln, Bill Harris. So we've been able to generate an interest in politics and in public service for people, young people, and those of us who still stay connected to our hometown.
Okay, thank you. Senator Nelson, what is important to know about your family? What would you be willing to share with us?
Well, I'm an only child, and as an only child, you grow up and you're raised as an adult. There's nobody to get into trouble with in the back seat, and there's nobody to conspire with at home against the parents. So there's no conspiracy. You're on your own. So it was a very close-knit family. And I had a great relationship with my father and with my mother and with my mother's brother, my Uncle Fred, who became sort of the brother I never had, somebody that I could spend a great deal of time with and always cherished the time that I had with him.
Okay, let's talk about professional life prior to entering politics. Give us a little bit of history there.
Well, I went to the University of Nebraska, and I majored in philosophy, and that led me to a master's degree in philosophy and teaching classes at the university in the philosophy department. Then I switched, and I almost completed a PhD, but I decided that I wanted to go to law school instead, and so while finishing up a master's degree, I went on to law school and graduated from the University of Nebraska School of Law.
Okay, we have a series of photos that we want to share with our viewers. We're going to start with a very familiar one. The photo will go up here in just a second. Some familiar faces here, right?
Yes.
So, State's Insurance Director appointed by Governor Jim Exon. Tell us what you're thinking when you're looking at this photo.
Well, you know, it was a great job for me at the time, and I was very pleased that Governor Exon appointed me, and we stayed in touch with Bob Kerrey, along the way as well. And so just having the opportunity to be a state regulator at that level was sort of a, if you will, a kickstart to the rest of my career.
Yeah, greatest accomplishment in that role?
Well, we had a company that was upside down financially called Pioneer Insurance Company, and to be able to find a way to have another company come in and acquire all of its business so that the employees and the policyholders never lost anything in the process, being able to correct something that financially had become insolvent, and rather than have people left out in the cold, we got another company and set operations to come in and take them over so that they didn't lose any of their policy benefits, and the people that had jobs continue to have jobs. It was a big accomplishment. It was a real tough time right then, and I told the governor, I said, we're going to work until we get this done and done right.
Okay, thank you. I want to put up another photo. Again, familiar faces to our viewers. Tell us about these ladies.
Well, this was the 1986 race for governor, Keyor and Helen Bousalis. And I happened to be co-chair of Helen Bousalis' campaign. And it was a historical event because it was the first time two women had run for the same office, governor. And so it was a very interesting period of time. It was just 4 years later that I would run for governor. And while I was upset that we didn't win at that time, I said rather than linger with the feelings that I had, I would just set myself up to see if that was a good time to run for governor in 1990.
Okay. Speaking of which, I want to put our next photo up for viewers. And I want to ask you, in your time as governor, so much we could talk about. What were your greatest priorities?
My priorities were, I'd call them the education, economic development, and the environment. Those three really drove everything that I tried to work on. Then ultimately, efficiency in government. So I picked up a fourth E. To make sure the government was as efficient as we could get it, we combined a number of agencies into one, reducing the overhead costs, and we thought also reducing the amount of if you will, bureaucracy to get government better for the people and at a lower cost. So those were the things that we worked on. We got, for example, the Environmental Trust Fund for an educational trust fund from the statewide lottery that I supported. And I was very happy that it got supported by the people in Nebraska in an election. And so we tried to do things that worked for everybody. I never saw that I was, in my own mind, that I was elected by just the people who voted for me, but I was elected to represent all the people in Nebraska. So our theme was always One Nebraska, and not focusing just on East, West, urban, rural, West, North and South, Omaha, Scottsbluff, all the communities and all the people in Nebraska.
If folks remembered you a certain way for your time as governor, how would that way be? What would you wish?
Well, that I cared about all the people in the state, that everybody mattered, whether they supported me or not. And I think it was reflected in my re-elections as well, the size of the re-elections. And I think it also reflected that I reached out to the people as much as I possibly could, because I thought that was important to do. And I enjoyed the children. Children are only 25% of our population, but 100% of our future. And if we ever lose sight of that, their future is not. Our future will be dimmer, and their future won't be as bright for them, because we pass on the baton, we trade the ages for new opportunities, and that was what I always sought to do, to make sure that it was good for everybody, because if it wasn't good for everybody, it wouldn't be as good for anybody.
Yeah. You talk about being out with the people. I want to put our next photograph up, and you can tell us a little bit about what you're seeing here. So, another familiar face. Tell us about this photo.
Well, that was my one loss. running time for the Senate in '96 with my opponent, Chuck Hagel. Someone asked me if I ever had opportunity to do that again, what would I do? I said I would have looked at the statistics on how many people are elected midterm from the governor's position to the Senate. And I could only find 2 or 3 in the history of politics. So I was really running against the grain, if you will, and against statistics. And I'm one who pays pretty close attention to data and statistics because I think you have to learn from science as much as you can, but I didn't. And that was the mistake that I made.
Let's segue into your time in the U.S. Senate. We have a video that we're going to put up for our viewers. And as we are taking a look at that, I want you to tell me what's coming to mind.
Okay.
But then I also want to ask you about what was probably a pretty rough beginning for you. Let's take a look at this. What's coming to mind as you're watching this?
Mr. Sarbanes of Maryland, Ms. Snow of Maine.
Thoughts?
Well, walking with Chuck Hagel, who was then my colleague and from Nebraska, and there with then the vice president, who had just been defeated in his race for president by George W. Bush, and the others each of whom had been reelected. They were all. At the end there is Olympia Snowe from Maine, and it was a good group to be sworn in with because I was able really to work with all of them.
It was a rough start, though, Senator. I think if people are doing the math here and they look at this being 2001, I mean, months later we had 9/11, and who would have seen that coming, right? So volatile time for you. I want to talk about your thoughts on how that impacted legislation.
Well, it was such a shock. I mean, everybody was in disbelief about what happened and how extraordinary it was and how many people lost their lives and how unprepared we appeared to be for that kind of an attack. If there was anything that would you could say came from it, it was that it united the country in a way that it's not united today and hasn't been united that way since. But everyone felt the need to come together and try to do what we could for the sake of our country, and not for our own sakes. We weren't looking out for ourselves individually. It was for the country. And so we were able to do certain things. The Homeland Security Department, we were able to engage in defensive activity as well as offensive activity in Asia, in the Middle East. We were able to bring together solutions where there was more agreement than disagreement, and that was a good time for legislation of that type. Tax cuts that got through after being adjusted, bipartisan adjustments to them, but people felt the strong need to work together where we possibly could. And there were different ideas about how to go about it, but that's where the Senate was a deliberative body. It wasn't one of those slam dunks one way or the other. It was looking for ways to find solutions and come together to work for the best interests of our country and for everybody in the country.
Yeah, the years that followed became more partisan.
Yes.
And then in 2012, as we saw from the opening video, you stepped away and probably gained a bit of a different perspective on things. Tell us when you decided, and we'll talk about the book, starting with the title, but I want to know, at what point did you decide, I am going to write a book about this?
Well, right after I left, I had some people talking to me about the idea, and I said, if you're going to write a book, you have to have something to write about. And I don't want to write an autobiography, and I'm not going to have a biography written by somebody else about me. That's okay. It's just that I didn't feel any need to do that. And when I say people were talking, it wasn't a groundswell, but so I'm not going to overstate it. But for those who suggested that I think about doing it, I said, unless there's something to write about, I don't think I want to invest that kind of time. So as I watched the Senate go as the direction that I thought it was going to go, sadly, and I talked to some of my former colleagues, particularly those who were expats in the Senate, the Joe Liebermans, the Trent Lotts, and a whole host of others. We were all starting to talk about the good old days when we were there. And when you start talking about the good old days, you may be right about that. It may not be a figment of your imagination. Those were the good old days compared to what we were seeing and seeing even more today, because deliberation was gone. Bipartisanship was gone. We were moved to a tribal system where you belong to a tribe as opposed to a political party to get things done. It's more interest in being part of the tribe than it is what the tribe's about. In many cases, not in all, but in many cases. So that was developing, and the more I watched it, the more concerned I became about what was going to happen ultimately. I couldn't see any good outcome from the reduction and the loss of bipartisanship. So that it's the Senate is based on having protection for the rights of the minority party in the Senate. Mm-hmm. And when that's being changed, when they're now, for example, in the case of judicial nominees, repealing the filibuster mm-hmm. For those nominees, nothing good is going to come from that other than the party that's in power gets to appoint who they want. Mm-hmm. And if it's the Democrats, they'll go as far to the left politically with people that they can put on to protect what they think needs to be protected, and the Republicans will go the other direction and put people on who I think are outside of the mainstream. Mm-hmm. Because why? Because they can if they have the votes. And that's not really what it was about. So that's why I decided something has to be done, something has to be written, somebody has to take a chance and put yourself out there for subject to be criticized or whatever it is, because otherwise it's not going to happen.
And then hence the death of the Senate. We want to put the cover of your book up. So, my front row seat to the demise of the world's greatest deliberative body. Sometimes the title is the toughest, but the way you've just set this up, mm-hmm. this makes sense, right?
Well, I think so. It's not dead. It's on life support if things don't change. And the change is coming from the outside and from the inside, as we might expect. The senators have to, we need more. The late Senator Ed Zirinsky always had a saying that I got a kick out of because it was true. He said the problem in Washington is that there are too many Republican senators and too many Democratic senators, not enough United States senators. And I might add to that, there are not enough United States senators like George W. Norris from my hometown in McCook, who served in Congress for 40 plus years, because he was a bold, step forward type person who didn't shirk, didn't shy from responsibility, and he would reach across the aisle. As a matter of fact, the story goes that Franklin D. Roosevelt came to Nebraska and campaigned for George Norris against the his Democratic opponent. I mean, those were the kinds of days where people did that. Now, it was not totally commonplace, but it also was possible for that to happen. Those days have disappeared, but they could come back, and that's the point I want to make in the book.
What have you seen that has transpired? You talk about having that front row seat. What was it? Were there a few things? Was it kind of a snowball effect that would lead you to believe that something of this significance would be dying?
Yeah, it has to happen from the leaders of the Senate as well, the leaders of the caucuses. I was really disturbed because I was there when the Republican leader, Mitch McConnell, said that his number one objective after Barack Obama was elected president was to make sure that he didn't get a second term. He said his number one objective. But he only represents the state of Kentucky. That's why he's there. He got more votes than his last opponent in his last race. But to say something like that, that meant that he believed somehow he could make his constituents, his caucus group, go along with him to keep the president from getting a second term. Now, there's something that skewed about that. It would be skewed if the Democrats said, leader said, my goal is to make sure that the Republican elected president now doesn't get a second term. I don't think that's in the best interest of this country, and I think it's wrong, and that's why I wanted to call it out.
You know, I think we have, myself included, people watching going, okay, Senator, how can this possibly happen? These are people who are elected. They're supposed to be doing the right thing on behalf of the people. So stories that you're aware of, like the ones you just described, you just got to think, how can this be?
Well,
right?
part of it comes about because of the advent of the loud crowd. First the Tea Party, and then as it's grown into a party stronger than the Tea Party. But it's a loud crowd that threatens the Republicans, and some that will threaten the Democrats as well now. But they threatened the Democrats back in 2000. It would have been 2010, 9 and 10. That if you don't go along with the Republican leader, we will run a person against you in the primary. So the word primary became a verb for a lot of people. We will primary you from within your own party if you don't support the leadership of the caucus, or if you support the President Obama, for example. So a fear factor was introduced that hadn't been quite as strong in the past era as it became when it was now. You were going to be subject to being thrown out of office by your own party if you didn't follow the leader.
Mm-hmm. As you're sitting around with your former colleagues and you're talking about the good old days, I would imagine that there's quite a bit of, collaboration that is taking place. What do you all think is the solution to this? I mean, it's no quick, easy fix, right? But when you're talking about solutions, which I would imagine you do, what are you saying?
Well, I'm saying really a number of things. Number one, I don't think you have to follow the leader if you think the leader's wrong. I don't want to point out myself too much in this, but if you asked Harry Reid, and he makes comments in the book, I didn't always follow what Harry Reid wanted. But my goal was, when I got elected, and I campaigned on this in 2000 when I was running for the Senate, that I would support the president, whoever the president is. I didn't know whether it was going to be George W. Bush or Al Gore. Mm-hmm. But whoever the president is, I'd support the president when I thought the president was right. I wouldn't when I didn't, but I wouldn't obstruct. I would try to find solutions. I would try to find compromise if it was available, but I wasn't going to either vote yes or no without thinking about the consequences and trying to find something better. So in the case of George W. Bush, I worked with the White House on their tax cut. And now, they didn't necessarily appreciate every thought that I had about it, because I wanted to reduce the size of it, and we did. But it was a compromise. And I sat with the vice president in a room, and he wrote down on a napkin that I saved, on the napkin, that the top number was 1.6. He wrote, he had 1.25 for me, and he went in 1.45. Well, we got 1.35, I think it was, but on a napkin. That was the way it would work, because I wouldn't vote absolutely no and obstruct when I could find a way to work with the White House to get something accomplished, because I believed in a tax cut. I'd cut taxes in Nebraska with the legislature, so that was my ultimate goal, but to get it right, not just get a tax cut.
Okay, thank you. We've got 2 minutes remaining. So people watch this program and they think, oh, it's so good to see the senator again. I'm going to go out and I'm going to buy that book. They're going to read that book. Then what do you want them to do?
Well, then I want two things to happen. I want those who are in the Senate, I want them to be bolder and step aside from party leadership and caucus leadership, and not look at the Democrats as the enemy, and that they have to oppose all the time. That means that you cross the aisle and find members of the other side that you can talk to and try to find solutions that have something of both. You know, this country functions best when it's just center left or center left or center right, not when it goes clear to the left or goes clear to the right. And that's where the caucuses today are aiming. Go as far this way or as far that way as possible. They've got to move away from doing that. And then here at home, we have to be sure we're sending people who agree and who can campaign on that they will work with the other side to get things done for the country.
Talking with Senator Ben Nelson today about his new book, Death of the Senate. Folks wanting more information, we have a great website, and this is an easy one to remember. I love this website. SenatorBenNelsonBook.com. I want to thank you so much for being here and sharing your time, expertise, and your short stories. I want to wish you the best of luck with this book and beyond.
Well, so far, so good, and I appreciate it, and thank you for this opportunity.
You bet. So good to see you. Thanks to our students who are working so hard behind the scenes, and our viewers for watching. As we close, a look at the Discovery Garden at Joslyn Art Museum is seen through the lens of Addison Parr, a junior here at UNO.
Consider This is an issues and information program produced by UNO Television. More information and program archives can be found at nebraskapublicmedia.org/considerthis. If you'd like to share your comments about this program, call UNO Television at 402-554-2516 during regular business hours, or send an email to cwyatt@unomaha.edu.
It is the longest-running Omaha-based statewide television program on the air today. Hi everyone, I'm Kathy Wyatt, producer and host of Consider This. Now in our 25th season, we wish to acknowledge those who have made this educational journey possible. Our guests, underwriters, student crews, the Knowledge Network, the University of Nebraska at Omaha, and of course, viewers just like you. Thank you for watching.